Hey people, about ready to start Measure Up.
Hello?
I want you to know that Simple Lord would have been proud of you. Got the message? I'm gonna get down.
Don't get ya into the zip. Don't get ya into the zip of your pants. Don't get ya. Oh, no, no, no. Don't get ya into the zip of your pants. Throw me out. Take a tape. Throw me a bit. The head. All right. Hand me down. That's the fight. Now you're punk. You gotta get ready. I'll be paid. Hey man, you think you got to see. Hell, gonna be damn for me.
What a great way to start another day on KUHSdenver.com. I'm your host, Lowell Whiteman of Measure Up. We're going to talk about power and privilege between the genders, as we have for the last 4 weeks. And it's a great way with pick up the music, turn off the music. Yeah, well, that's the instructions I have. I'm so good at this, I can read lips. Well, reading lips is one thing, but the truth is the best, because we're here to talk about the truth and move that truth into some education and some knowledge that people can take action on in real ways. And that's the question I've had from the beginning in starting Measure Up. And in fact, we may make some changes to Measure Up and move it to a place where it's going to get the best light shown upon it for the benefit of all genders. As I said when I first started the show, it was not about women. It was about power and privilege and making sure that we share information and knowledge that will help both genders understand how do we communicate more effectively? How do we define the terms that are upsetting people because of the misconceptions and the misunderstandings that are happening? You know as well as I do the names of the faces that have been, well, in some cases indicted. In other cases, just implied that they said the wrong thing, they did the wrong thing to someone else and took their power and privilege away from them or just minimally diminished it in some way. That's what I want to make sure that we're always talking about. The truth regarding power and privilege between the genders. And recently the Golden Globes happened and there was a huge amount of very positive things that came about during the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes were hosted by Seth Meyers. Lots of talented Hollywood elite were in the audience. But Meyers opened the show by saying these things. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I'll do it again the right way. Welcome, ladies and remaining gentlemen. He went on to say, the first time in 3 months, it won't be terrifying to hear your name read out loud. Now, everybody laughed and giggled at that, but a man said it. The same things that are the same way we've said things before in a joking, comical way, and now those jokes, or jokes not like what Myers said, but other jokes that were directed about gender and gender interactions. And we can't say those that much. Or we have to think about what we say before we say it, which is good. It's a good thing to do. To make sure that we're being fair and we're not diminishing the capacity of someone's power to be who they are and to be recognized for who they are. Now, today's show, I posted out on my Measure Up extra point this week. I talked about the phrases that are confusing to me. Hashtag me too. I understand that. That's the one I understand very clearly. But I have questions about, what do I do? What do I do? I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband. I'm a guy, a heterosexual male who wants to understand what I can do to help so that my granddaughter doesn't have to face the kinds of questions and confrontations that other women have faced. I want to make sure that my daughter continues to grow as a professional, a young professional who is extremely talented, but has also had the experiences that are referenced by many of the women who are telling their stories. Which brings me to the other phrase that is kind of confusing to me. I want to understand. I mean, I understand it in principle and intent. It's time is up. Time's up. I've heard other people call it time is now, but I think the phrase with the pin is time's up. And that means, from what I understand, it's the time is up for women to sit back and hide their experiences or put their stories in their mind and not let them out into the open to point fingers and legitimately make accusations that have truth behind them. And that's where I want to share another quote with you. The quote goes like this: each of us in this room are celebrating, in the room at the Golden Globes, are celebrated because of the stories that we tell. And this year we became the story. But it's not just the story affecting the entertainment industry. It's one that transcends any culture, geography, race, religion, politics, or workplace. And therein lies the intention of Time's Up, which means to affect change across all industries, transcending cultural, economic, and political differences. That was from Oprah Winfrey's speech during the Golden Globes. And I understand that. That gives me very clear understanding of the definition of Time's Up and what that means. I now am asking for action steps. Give me a sense of what action steps do we want to take from that definition to affect change across all industries, transcending culture, economic and political differences. And how about gender? How about transcending gender? Because if we don't start talking about the men and the women together and creating messages and movements with each other, it's not going to go anywhere with the kind of vigor and rigor and enrichment that you deserve, that you want. I don't understand that part. I'm really looking for some people to share with me about that. If you've got something to share, please share. KUHSdenver.com. Go to the website, leave a comment there. 360mindset.com. Post something on my site. Coach LKW, at Coach LKW on my Twitter account. Can you hear my feelings in this? Can you hear the sincerity in my voice? This comes from me deep down inside me, because I want to know about the answers so I can put energy behind solutions on behalf of my granddaughter who's 6. And I don't want her to feel the same kind of pain and discomfort I saw in my daughter's eyes, her aunt. I'm not going to protect them fully. I'm going to let them learn their own lessons, even if it causes pain for me. But I'm going to speak up as well so that there is guidance. Here's another piece of some of the comments that were made during the Golden Globes. For too long, women have not been heard or believed if they dared to speak their truth to the power of those men. I'd like a definition of those men, Oprah. She continued to say, in a very knowing voice, as the author of this Golden Globe transcript says, but their time is up. Their time is up, and so were the bottoms of the seats. That was from the commentary. She goes on with this quote. So I want all girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And she concludes with the dramatic words that she said during the Golden Globes. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women, many of whom are right in this room tonight, and some pretty phenomenal men fighting hard to make sure that they become the leaders who take us to the time when nobody ever has to say, me too, again. And I want to point out a phenomenal man that I followed his career. I've been following his career for a long time, and I like his humor. I like and then one of his friends kind of roasted him a little bit during the Golden Globes. That was Seth Rogen, who roasted Franco. But he really genuinely and sincerely made some remarks on CBS, the talk show on CBS, when he was asked about some comments on Twitter that were made about his behavior in the past. And legitimately, I'll just summarize. He just said, look, if I've done something wrong, tell me. I can't let that stick in my head. I need to fix that. I want to fix that. And then Ali Sheedy, prior to his remark on the talk show, had taken down her comments. But there were others that were out there. And he continued, Franco continued to say, listen, I want to fix it. And he's an example of where my frustration is. I don't know what I don't know. Tell me what I don't know. And I'm sincerely saying that. I'm not saying it because as women you think that that's what guys say. Well, I didn't know any better. I'm sorry. Well, I do know better. But if I did something or said something, or I could be saying something to make it better, give me some insights. I know from my daughter many, many things that I have done. I've changed myself because from her perspective as a young girl and then as a young woman, as a professional, as a student, I learned things. As working with college female athletes, professional female athletes, I learned stuff about how they're dealing with the masculine community and the co-ed kind of settings in colleges. I learned from them, and I take those lessons because I'm listening to them. But I really would like to know more about what I can do so that I can continue to perpetuate conversation about this and make sure that another father's daughter, another grandfather's granddaughter doesn't have to have the discomfort, the distress, the humiliation of any incidences that have been recorded to this point in the stories of difficulty that women have had to have both personally and professionally. So the question for me again is, where and when should the masculine opinion be shared? I think the guys aren't stepping up because they don't know if they're going to be ridiculed, chastised, castrated, whatever. I mean, I think the feminine community, the movements, the Me Too movements, time's up. And the funds going into that legal defense fund that they're trying to put together. I mean, $15 million have been raised for that. that's outstanding in a very short period of time. So that only tells me that the mindset is dramatically interested in making sure that those who don't have a voice at this time have a way to have their voice be heard and their stories shared without retribution that and ridicule, that their power and their privilege is adequately heard. It's a great thing that's happening. What Oprah Winfrey has done, what she continues to do, what others did during the show that was amazing in raising the consciousness. It was really, really, really cool. And I'm just reading my comments here. There was a co-presenter with Ron Howard, Natalie. She said when she presented, she said she gave another kind of push at the realities, and she said this. And here are the all-male nominees for I think it was director. But she was snubbing that the Lady Bird director, Greta Gerwig, and Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman. Those two directors were not nominated and were yet deserving of that possibility to be nominated for that role. And it just, the criteria, see, here's the specifics I'm looking for. So what's the criteria for that? If we looked at it and said, okay, how are directors evaluated to be included in this nomination? So that Natalie Portman, when she read it, she wouldn't have to resort to this jab, this jolting interjection that goes as, and here are all the male nominees. And that was obvious. But then the question becomes, does the criteria adequately look at all genders who are admissible as candidates for that award? And if so, then if it's all men, then that's because they met the criteria, and the women that were in there did not. Now I say that with some reluctance because I don't. I want if you think that I'm saying it to placate anybody or to be in support of men and not women, then bring it. Ask me to explain myself. But I don't know anything about the criteria for that award, and I want to know so that as a guy, if I had the power, I'd go in and say, listen, we need to change this criteria. It's not fair. It's gender biased. It needs to be fixed. I've done it in the athletic world. I stepped up for female athletes when they're being biased, not for their gender, for their orientation, which is a whole nother category of thought. But if we are to be thinking about this in a scholarly way to get to real change that addresses the issue, then we're all going to pick up a baton that's wrapped with the desire to have knowledge without pushing that knowledge away just because it doesn't fulfill our argument. We want all knowledge, all things, so that you can make decisions about what's going on in this world today. And in a more global sense, this particular issue about gender balance as power and privilege is long overdue. As Barbara Streisand commented when she picked up the baton and said, when she came out to close the show, she was talking about the Best Motion Picture Drama, which went to the 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, as the only female Golden Globe winner for the Best Director ever for Yentl in 1984. That was Barbara Streisand. She marveled that no one had matched that feat yet. She comments that was 34 years ago. So time is up. She echoed the sentiment that Oprah Winfrey had already shared with the audience. That brought a standing ovation for Barbara. She went on to say, we need more women directors and more women to be nominated for Best Director. There are so many films out there that are so good, directed by women. And she went on to say, I'm very proud to stand in a room with people who speak out against gender inequality, sexual harassment, and the pettiness that has poisoned the politics, and that I'm proud that our industry, faced with uncomfortable truths, has vowed to change the way we do business. Regardless of the industry, that statement is extremely apropos for any place where there's injustice being felt, any place where there's inequality, sexual harassment, or pettiness that poisons the politics, like what's going on right now. In my opinion, a place that's been devastated by natural disasters is not a shithole. And anybody who uses that to identify their beliefs quickly becomes part of that of which they accuse. I go on with what Barbara Streisand says further in this quote. Truth is powerful, and in a really good film, we recognize the truth about ourselves, about others. And it's so powerful, it can even change people's minds, touch people's hearts, and ultimately even change society itself. Man, I want that to be true. I want that to be true in bigger ways than it has already been felt over the years in other issues. Issues that go back to World War II and the political poison that was in the society and in Germany and throughout Central Europe. I'm hoping that we're going to have voices that become heard that then create with that hearing a change in mindsets that delivers actions so that people like Taryn Burke can continue her movement, her Me Too movement, in a way that doesn't take 10 years for her to eventually get a groundswell of huge interest in what she's been doing for so many years. A congresswoman from California has invited Miss Burke to attend with her the State of the Union address later on this month. Miss Burke was a guest of one of the actors at the Golden Globes, along with many others who are part of the Me Too movement and have been for years, which is why the symbolic donning of black garments or black attire, black dresses, I have to say, as a sidebar, not without fashionable intent, because black or not, black's an okay color, but it shouldn't be the norm. It just gets kind of boring. But the women and men, the women in particular, were just stunning in the black garments that they wore, because they are who they are. They're fashion conscious. Gosh, we have so much talent. So much talent. It just baffles me that these kinds of injustices have gone on for so long. As I said to you a few times in the last few shows, I've talked to over 70 women, and each one of them have had humbling, hurtful experiences. And when I talk about humility, I talk about a positive side of humility, something emotionally that's rocked them to their core, that has caused them to be less than who they are because of the trauma that it caused them. That was so surprising to me. It's so frustrating. The positive thing here for me, as I keep finding myself rising up in my intention, is that these discussions, Me Too, Time Is Now, or Time Is Up, the She Speaks, and any number of phrases that will come into the future to define the pieces, are unifying. They're galvanizing. Not just the women who are powerful, but the women that don't think they have a voice. and that the message about time is up, and that they are willing to raise funds, substantial funds, to help protect and then bring out the stories with that protection of women who didn't think that they had any recourse, that they just had to kind of huddle and hold it inside and continue to go through their lives with a burden of humiliation, or now have a path. We need to find more paths, because not everybody's the same. Everybody has a different way they approach their life, and that's true for every young girl and woman out there. And we need to keep the discussion going. And man, it's our turn, man. It's the time is up, and part of that slice of time is up is that we've got to call out injustice. We've got to help with our wives, our moms, our aunts, to be there by their sides with the little girls, the nieces, the nephews, the granddaughters and daughters, and help them share the male perspective of what is right. Because it is the time to be aware and share. Miss Burke said to CNN on Tuesday of this week, she said, "It's not about a viral campaign for me. It's about a movement. And that movement began," as she put it, "in the deepest, darkest place in my soul." Here's what she means. And you might think when I say that Miss Burke has had an incident herself. Now, she has not, in what I've read so far, disclosed anything that has personally confronted her by a male or a female that's compromised her spirit, her capacity to be herself and optimize her performance. But here's what it was. When she was a camp counselor, she experienced a little girl coming to her in camp and sharing a story. After her as a camp counselor had a kind of a girls' night out, they did an event, and all the girls like a sleepover kind of thing at camp. They went to see a movie or what have you. And after that event, I'm not even sure what the motivation was by the little girl to bring this story to Miss Burke, but she told Miss Burke about, at this young age, how she had been abused, marginalized is a kind word for what her mom's boyfriend / stepfather had done to her on more than one occasion, routinely, both emotionally and physically, in a sexual way. And Miss Burke was so taken aback at her young age at the time as a camp counselor. She said, she cut the little girl off and said, "You need to go see somebody else. I can't handle this. You need to go talk to somebody else." But when she saw what her remarks did to this little girl, through the little girl's face, about how dejected she was and how hurt she was for now not being told, almost like it was an embarrassment, a painful embarrassment, that here's somebody she thought she could trust to share her story, and she was turned away without explanation, without any care. Just said, "Go away, I can't handle it. Go talk to some other counselor about it." That was the motivation for Miss Burke to start her programs in Brooklyn as the program director for Girls for Gender Equity. So her goal is to empower young women of color. The seed for that movement was planted in 1996 when that incident happened. So there's lots of different stories. The stories have to come out through a process that's safe, so that, I'm sure Ms. Burke would agree with me, that a little girl like that doesn't have that experience, but rather she knows of a place she can go to get her story out of her system, help her get closure and move forward and move on with the help of other young women and men who are understanding of what the need is in their role in helping that young woman. It could also be a young boy. We don't have the paths for these kids to follow, and kids of any age, so that the statements that were made at the Golden Globe are not just statements that hit the air, get reveled in the moment, and people get handshake and pats on the back for what they say in that moment, and that it continues on. So let me give you a personal note. This is the 7th show that we've attempted to do as Measure Up in trying to present education and methods for educating people about power and privilege, and how when it's misused and abused towards any individual or group, that individual or group has a method to go feel good about themselves, get some form of guidance about what they've just gone through, so that we can help them connect. I know there's differences between men and women. That's obvious. You know what the obvious ones are. The physical ones, the emotional ones, the way guys look at things and women don't, regardless of orientation, by the way. I'm not making, hetero versus homosexual differences here. I'm talking about, it doesn't matter what the orientation is. There are differences. That it's just the female, the organic part of it, female, male. We're different. Plumbing, start there. We're different. Until we can start having more conversations about those differences, and then building on the layers of understanding once we open up the general presumptions of differences and allow young kids to understand about what's going on in their world at that point, we're not going to do anything that's going to avoid the kinds of physically abusive and violent, in many cases, stories that we're hearing, and how much they've been hidden. It saddens me to think about how much I might have been part of that, what I'm asking for to happen in the future. That when I was a boy in high school and college, when I played sports, I probably heard a lot of locker room stuff, and not just locker room, in the bars, on the streets, in the classroom, at my place of work, innuendos, guys, elbowing each other in what they thought was good humor about what they saw at the sales assistant's desk and how great she looked today. Instead of saying, that's a person, and that's a person who I work with. I'd like to know how intelligent they are, or I'd like to know something about their hobbies legitimately, and not objectify them, privately or publicly. So the next, where I want to go next with those statements is to talk about how do we as men and women come together with what we already know and build on it, so that we put some purposeful action and intent into the title of Me Too and Time's Up. I think they're two different things. If you disagree with me, let me know, but I think Me Too and Time's Up are two different things. Taryn Burke would be somebody I'd love to hear from about that to clarify or to validate for me that it is true what I believe, that they're two different things. Because Miss Burke, she talks about the Me Too movement is to empower young women of color. And when I say that, I want to make sure that y'all understand white's a color, brown is a color, various shades of browns are color, any color. And Me Too talks about more the disrespect and violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault, where Time's Up picks up with, let's help with those who want to litigate, get their story out, protect them legally, and make sure that they get heard so that they can become whole again and get back to a place that they can perform as they are intended to perform, as a good contributor to their families and society, and not be muted because of an incident. I mean, any woman I've talked to about the stories that have made up their lives, the uncomfortable, disrespectful stories about how people treated them, there's a residue that's left behind. There is a hurt that never goes away. Could it? It might. You know, therapists that are better than I at that conversation could give us a confirmation of that. But it has to be dealt with for the benefit of the future of my, selfishly, my granddaughter. I want to be a good grandfather. I want to educate my son and my daughter-in-law about things that they need to make sure they look for in school. When I was an educator looking at curriculum for middle school and high school, and then again at higher education in the college level, middle school and high school, I don't know, I've been in Midwest as well as mountain states. I've looked at a lot of different curriculums. When we look at sex ed in curriculums in school districts, I challenge anybody to tell me that and confirm it legitimately, that there is a section in sex education about the discussions that are arising out of the Me Too movement and time's up. We need more of those discussions as part of the curriculum. The learning objectives such as what's our examples of respectable ways to speak to a female? What are respectable ways to speak to a male? I'll tell you from a little boy's perspective, a big boobs dilemma for little girls is a small penis for the boys. Everybody has their issues about image. We don't talk about that in sexual education because I'm sure there are family units or the public that says that's just deal with the biology. Everybody's got 5 fingers in each hand as the norm. You know, it's a symmetrical body. You cut us in half, both have, you know, they look alike, 2 lungs, blah, blah, blah. You know, there are all these basic scientific things. That's all we're going to stay with. We're not going to deal with the emotions and the interactions and conversations and how to deal with that and what's appropriate touching. What are the consequences of that? Or the lack of consequences of talking about that. We'd rather just wait until there's a crisis to deal with it. I'm sure with all the intelligence we have in this world, people like Taryn Burke and others who have been around the individuals and groups that need the support, we can find a strategy that's both socially and politically correct and accurate to help us mitigate the shit that we're in. You know, can we imagine for a moment those men who have been accused of doing inappropriate things, legitimate or not? Let's just say they've been accused and it's out there. The thought is out there. If they would have had a little bit more involvement, be it by curriculum, mandatory curriculum type of stuff in sexual education, to learn about the ways to be appropriate in your behavior. And that knowledge then carries forward into their daily lives as an adult. We might not have had the Harvey Weinstein kind of situation. We might not have had the situations that have been identified over and over again. The most recent one, well, Franco in his situation. Kirk Douglas is another. I mean, that's come up. It's opened the door for some. It's important. It's an important topic, but we've got to be eyes wide open so that we make sure that there's due course with this, and everybody has their day to make amends if it's real, if it's legit. So I'm going to come back to what I opened up with, and that is education and knowledge. That's what we're here for. Measure Up is to give you an opportunity to speak about what you want to know. And the guests I've had on so far have been extremely helpful, both for me as well as to the audience. But I think, the glow is quickly diminishing. It's been a hot item, and I'm concerned that it's going to fade and it's going to sit back in the neighborhoods, which is not a bad thing, but the energy needs to be sustained in some way. I'm looking forward to more structure and more national awareness and messaging about what's going on, so that we can stay focused on it. I'd like to see know about movements to education and curriculum additions to things like the sex education curriculum in schools. I do know, to kind of back a little bit up on the sex ed thing, I do know that there are isolated situations with teachers who add components to the curriculum that address interaction, the communications between boys and girls, and what's appropriate. Touching, not intimacy, just touching, shaking a hand, giving a hug, touching a forearm. When is that appropriate? Should you ask before you do that? Opening a door, being just a good person, a kind person, and not worrying about the gender and how it would accept your gesture to them. So giving some guidance as to how we slice it up and understand where we're at. Those kinds of things need to be part of the future in delivering the knowledge and the education so that we can learn more about our behavior and how we should perform as individuals. All right. Switching to more practical things about these issues and what you can hopefully, I'm hoping you can expect some great changes with things. But and as I say that, I'm gonna introduce the how do we evaluate our leadership in this area, both the men and women. Now, at the Golden Globes, lots of female women, that's redundant, lots of women leaders stepped up and showed what they want to do, can do, and have been doing. Taryn is a great example of that. Oprah Winfrey, Natalie Portman. We want to make sure that we have other leaders in other places politically, and so that the policies and suggestions on process that come from Time's Up movement, the Me Too movement, gets a reality to it because of legislation that gets put in place to help us stay on task. Here's an example. Tax law reform that was signed in. How many of you realize that in that tax law reform, a deductible was taken away from teachers? Do I need to tell you what the percentage of female versus male teachers are in this world, in this country? So for all teachers, men and women, the deduction for them to go out and buy supplies for their school and or their class has been removed. It's gone. And most of the teachers are middle income, middle America people that do a great job. I am a licensed teacher. I feel for them. I bought supplies for my classroom because we didn't have the budget to be able to give us the resources to expand and enrich the curriculum. Not because the principals didn't want to do it. It just wasn't there. And now you take the deduction away from us. But then you're going to say to me, as I've heard, you're going to give it back to us because the tax rate is lower. Well, right now, the effective tax rate for middle income people, which is less than $70,000 per household, isn't showing me that I'm going to have my taxes reduced and more money in my pocket. Because if I have more money in my pocket, as you say I'm going to have starting in February with the new withholding laws being put into place, I don't know that that is going to actually make me feel better about my disposable income, that I can put more into retirement, save for a college education for my kid. Now, how does this relate to Time's Up and the Me Too movement? It's connected because of young families trying to start their families. The moms need to have more consideration for their time as a mom. Employers need to be pushed a little harder to provide time off with pay. Not everybody does that for the amount of time that's necessary. And what if we have postpartum depression? Not me, but what if the mom has postpartum depression? And in the situation where dad has a job where he's not, he's out of town every once in a while. And then they have to have daycare. There's a lot of issues that are surrounding this wonderful movement of Me Too and Time's Up. But if we don't start sculpting out criteria for asking more questions, sitting down with one another to discuss what's going on, that politicians in each state start organizing law and process around that law to deliver the benefits that stop what's been going on with women being taken advantage of by men, that stop families having to struggle for things like daycare compensation in their. If you're going to give me more money, don't just give it to me in a salary increase. Give it to me as a deductible item or a benefit within the payroll that doesn't hit my taxable income, so I can have a situation like that. Years ago, we had that, where companies were allowed to provide daycare systems at lower cost for their employees. So it's a benefit they didn't have to come out of pocket with after tax dollars. There's lots of strategies. There's lots of ways of helping ourselves be better. We are far too intelligent and far too active in our desires that we shouldn't have solutions to these issues to reduce the pain and discomfort for the women that have suffered at the hands of other men and other women and men by other men, because it's not about women, it's about power and privilege. The solutions have to be looked at for every incident that we discover. Regretfully, it's been happening to more women than men. And that's in my humble opinion. I'm sure there's a statistic somewhere that will point that out. Now, as I say that, I'm throwing challenges out to politicians now. We've got an election, midterm election coming up in 2018. Lots of things swirling about our current administration that represents us and not representing us well. And I say that both personally as well as just what's obvious. The facts are clear, and they're not refutable. They're just not. Because you can have one person say, "Oh, I heard him say that," or "I took a picture, or I made a recording," and somebody could say, "Well, you doctored it." Well, seven politicians in the same room heard our national leader, the most powerful human being on the planet, say the things that he said about Haitian citizens, about immigrants that might come to this country under any number of circumstances. They need to be considered. So there's a lot of places where time is up. So I want to see the movement make sure that it has structure and strategy to move forward with actions that really bring about change, as has been talked about by Oprah Winfrey, that has been talked about so eloquently by Barbara Streisand, and that Taryn Burke has been working for in the Me Too movement for over 10 years, and now is finally finding some real boost in what she's doing, because there is power in truth. I just hope the truth gets fitted into strategies that cause action to happen. I saw Lady Bird, the movie Lady Bird, awesome coming-of-age movie. And I saw it during film festivals before it actually hit the big screens across the country. Then I heard Greta Gerwig on Jimmy Fallon just as the movie was coming out, and she'd come off the film festival touring scene, and she was adorable. She is adorable as a director. And because in my mind, as old as I am, I think of directors as, the fire and brimstone, my way, the highway. I'm building this really great movie that has a great message, the Clint Eastwood. That was my Clint Eastwood impression, bad as it was. But this young lady is talented. And I am so glad that her talent is shown on the screen, and that she's feeling good about herself to build her career to the next jump. I hope that what's going on gives her more structure to fight more battles, to get more product that she creates into the mainstream. That the path to that is not harder. It's easier because she's earned it. Those are the kind of things I want to see happening. Patty Jenkins. I saw a Wonder Woman movie. I've been a Wonder Woman fan since I was a little kid. But Patty Jenkins captured the character of Wonder Woman in a way that I really respect, because it brought in the background of Wonder Woman and her culture and what created her and why she is who she is, and the struggles that she goes through in dealing with, the Superman, Batman, interaction and all that kind of stuff. I mean, she made it a story that was relatable at a human level versus superhuman level, even though we're watching a fantasy of sorts. It was a great message, and that took intuition. That takes a subtlety in your craft that not everybody has. So I want to see more Patty Jenkins stuff. I want to see her getting more opportunities. Look, I know that change doesn't happen quickly, especially when we're dealing with feelings, emotions, social norming to a certain degree. That's the way we've always done it here in Hollywood. Why should we change it? It's not broke. That kind of, crazy bullshit. It doesn't make any sense. Good is good. And if it's a woman who's bringing the good stuff, then let her continue to bring the good stuff and get out of her way. Let her do what she needs to do. The ripple effect of Time's Up and Me Too should be given consideration in our communities on a daily basis. It's not there yet. It should be given consideration in every interaction with a man and a woman and a man, a woman and a woman, so that the path to building a relationship, whatever level that relationship takes, whatever level of intimacy that relationship takes, freely, without hesitation, without taking advantage of somebody, literally forcing them into a corner or manipulating their brain. Hey, come to my hotel room. I want to talk to you about the film. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock at night and we've been drinking since 5. Really? That we're going to have a serious conversation? No, I don't think so. That stuff's got to stop. And it's got to stop before, it's not going to stop unless there's knowledge and education around the right way to interact with people that's safe for both parties. And that there's a clear understanding of the consequences that are going to incur if you don't stop. And I think there's a new not definition, but another layer to understanding the phrase, no is no. And that new layer is, no is no when you're trying to manipulate me to get me to do what you want. And it has nothing to do with sexual. Just get me to do what you want me to do, run and get a cup of coffee. Why? I'm a producer on the list here. I'm a woman and you think I should get you a cup of coffee? No. Somebody should bolt out of their chair and knock that guy down. That's a small example of what I'm talking about when I mean we will have success when actions like that are not even thought about. because we've educated our young people at an early age about what is appropriate so that we can take actions that optimize performance, that make us better, not keep dwelling and fixing the bullshit. We dwell on what makes us better and optimizes our performance all over the world. All over the world. Everybody that's on my list, Chile, Portugal, Germany, India, Spain, it happens all over the world. That's what's crazy. What's interesting to me is in Europe, Central Europe, and in parts of Asia, they're leading us. They have a better system than we do. And we haven't got our heads out of the sand to understand what's going on. Listen, this may be possibly the last time we're going to broadcast the Measure Up show. If it is, we're not going to stop talking about it. I'll talk about it on my show every Friday at 11 on KUHSdenver.com. 360 Performance Talk, because performance is what I do, and that's why I wanted this Measure Up show to happen, because I wanted to isolate it, get it, really hone in on it. Well, if you don't participate with me, if you don't tell me what you're thinking, if you don't want to be on the show, I want men and women on the show to share their stories so that we can get to some answers. If you don't indicate to me that you want to do that, I'm going to pull it back to 360 Performance Talk and talk about men and women in athletics, men and women in elite high performance areas, still bringing Taryn Burke's stories. Maybe even get Taryn Burke on my show and have her talk about her experience with young athletes in the neighborhoods and how they had to deal with it. How they had to try to avoid becoming a single mom when they're an outstanding basketball player or runner. It goes without saying I'm passionate about this. And again, I want to remind you, it's because I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, and I want better for my kids. And I love to laugh. I love to joke. I'm sarcastic. I was raised by an Archie Bunker who didn't know he was Archie Bunker. The sexual innuendos and stories that went on in the house with my uncles and my dad would curl people's hair nowadays because of how disrespectful they were to women just in general. And the kind of things they would say to my mom and grandmother and aunts, it was not right. And the only reason I know it's not right because I'm looking at it from the perspective of today. And I'm sorrowful about that I didn't have a better perspective, but it's not too late. I want to change it. I want to make it better. And I want to be there in a way that's going to help my granddaughter and my daughter be better people. Once again, look at KUHSdenver.com, the website there. Send in remarks, or my website, 360mindset.com. That's 360mindset.com. And type in a thought about the show, Measure Up. Do you want me to continue the show? If you do, I want you to participate. Share your information. Keep the drive going. Keep the messages going. Share your stories. I want you to share your stories. I'm going to try to bring more people in to share their stories and offer knowledge, offer insights to what's going on in their world about power and privilege, so that everybody has the chance to rise to the highest level of power they can get and gather and gain as much privilege as is due them for who they are, in a positive way, not in a way that manipulates or hurts, marginalizes, or differentiates somebody. This is Measure Up. I'm Lowell Whiteman, your host, having a great time talking about power and privilege between the genders. I hope you've enjoyed our show today. We talked about trying to get to an understanding of defining the Me Too movement. Time is up. Time is up. And it's not just time is up for what's going on with what's happening to our young women in this country. Time is up in a lot of different places. And I think what we need to start doing is making sure we shout out the steps to take action for doing what is right. And one of those things I'll end with today is about our president. He's not done things that are right. And I'm so proud of Dick Durbin and Senator Lindsey and others who said, no, that's what he said. That's what he said. Now I'm waiting for the actions. Where are the actions? So the time is up in lots of different ways and places. Let's bring the action to bear on the words and thoughts that we're creating. This is Lowell Whiteman, your host of Measure Up. Thanks for being there. And make sure you remember to take a breath. Take a breath.
Nowhere to run.
Thank you, everybody, for being out there for me. Please send me stuff. 360mindset.com on the website. Send me your thoughts.
The damage is done.